Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron and welcome back today to another video. It is the player ratings. Everton 0, Arsenal 1 at Goodison Park yesterday. As I said last night in the instant match reaction, wasn't at the game yesterday. I was in Leeds watching Busted. I was originally supposed to be at the game, but the fixture was changed with about 15 minutes notice, as we already know, so unfortunately I couldn't go. Managed to get an instant match reaction out, didn't have enough time to do this player ratings video, so I thought we'd do it today and then we'd do the game review tomorrow as well. So not much of a delay, a little bit of a delay, but not much of a delay. I'd say that I've calmed down an awful lot after yesterday, but I wasn't particularly upset or emotional after yesterday's results and performance. Don't get me wrong, I don't think it was a particularly good performance whatsoever, and I want to emphasise that because I had a couple of people in the comments saying, disagree, Cam, we were woeful, we were dreadful, etc, etc. I'm not saying we weren't woeful or dreadful yesterday, by the way. I wasn't saying in yesterday's instant match reaction that Everton were anything other than absolutely pathetic, but what I was saying is I can understand a pathetic performance against the better teams in the league, the teams that we've not really got any chance of beating anyway. It's the pathetic performances against teams that we should be beating at Goodison that I just can't stand for. And listen, you know, again, ultimately Everton shouldn't be putting in a pathetic performance at any time against any team, because we should be, the absolute minimum should be 110% hard work, effort, determination, battle. And if you lose a game because you're facing the team that it's simply better than you, then that is what it is. Yesterday, I don't think there was a particular amount of effort. I don't think there was a particular amount of determination. I don't think the players seemed like they wanted it. I don't think the players seemed like they were desperate to win and they were willing to give everything to win that game. I think it was very much a mentality of, oh, well, you know, we expect to lose this one, so it is what it is. And you can't have that mentality in Premier League football. You can't have that mentality when you are, when you're in relegation battles for 2 years on the bounce, no matter who you're playing, whether you're playing Arsenal or whether you're playing, Wolves at Goodison. You must go into every game thinking you can win and having a game plan to try and get something out of those games. And for me yesterday, Sean Dyche's game plan seemed like he didn't think that we could win that game, in any way. And ultimately, I think the performance of a lot of the players showed that as well. I think, as I said, a lot of lackadaisical performances, not much energy, not much passion, not much determination, not much of anything really. So yeah, disappointing. And like I said, I just want to clear things up. I wasn't in any way, shape or form saying that it was a good performance. I just sort of, like I said, it was one of those games that at the end of a season you might look at and go, well, we've lost to Arsenal at Goodison, not the end of the world. But ultimately, in a collective situation, given we've played 5 Premier League games so far this season, and ultimately we've only managed to get 1 point out of them, and we've lost at home to teams like Wolves and Fulham, it further emphasises how poor yesterday was. So yeah, anyway, let's get straight into it. Jordan Pickford then. I'm going to give him a 6. I thought he was okay. Don't think he was at fault for the goal. Don't think he could have particularly done anything more to stop the goal. It was a nice little bit of play by Arsenal and a lovely finish ultimately by Trossard. Don't know why Bukayo Saka was left with all the time in the world in the box to pick that pass, but ultimately he was left with all that time in the world to pick that pass. But yeah, like I said, I don't think you can particularly blame Jordan Pickford for that. I don't think he made many other mistakes in the game. His distribution wasn't great. He had a couple of moments where he played a couple of really, really good long balls and a couple of really, really good passes. But generally, again, the game plan seemed to be lump it forward from goal kicks and hope that one of the forwards, Beto, Danjuma, Dwight McNeil, can get on the end of it and can hold the ball up. And ultimately that didn't work from the first minute, and it was never going to work throughout the game. But I don't blame Jordan for that. I think, like I said, that's more of a managerial decision from Sean Dyche in terms of not having any sort of game plan whatsoever in terms of going forward. So yeah, I thought he was all right. Jordan made a couple of good saves as well, saves you'd expect them to make, and ultimately wasn't massively a fault for the result. Vitaly Mykolenko then, left back. I'm going to give him a 6.5. I thought he was okay yesterday, Vitaly Mykolenko. I'll be honest with you, obviously it's his first Premier League game of the season. Ashley Young has played over at left-back for the other 4 games, and given it was his first minutes in the Premier League, given obviously he was coming up against Bukayo Saka, who is one of the most informed forwards in the division, and ultimately one of the best forwards in the division. He obviously faced him when England faced Ukraine last week, and I actually think he done relatively okay. Now, I'm sure, we'll go back and we'll look at the goal again and we'll be able to pick parts in the goal of where maybe Vitaly Mykolenko could have done better, and some people will say, well, that shows he's not good enough because the one goal we conceded did come from his side of the pitch. But I think generally his performance was okay. He dealt well with Saka on a number of occasions in the first half. He defended well. He made a brilliant block at one point. I think it was when we were 1-0 down, where he come across the box and he slid in and he blocked the shot. It was a fantastic block. And yeah, I just think generally he was okay. I think if you're looking at Vitaly Mykolenko yesterday and saying he performed awfully, I think it's a little bit unfair. That don't get me wrong, I'm not saying he was brilliant, I'm not saying he was great. I just thought he was decent defensively. I don't think he was at fault for very much at all. So yeah, I'm going to give him a 6.5. Jared Branthwaite, similarly, I'm going to give him a 6.5 as well. Again, I think although we may look back at the goal we conceded in a day or so's time, or before we do the review tomorrow, we'll watch the highlights again, and I might sit here and go, oh, well, Branthwaite was allowed them to move into the space and didn't pick up his man, etc, etc. Other than that, I thought defensively he was quite solid all game, and I think defensively we were all right, and again you can say, oh, but we've lost the game ultimately and it was through a lapse of concentration, and I understand that and I get that, and I said it yesterday, ultimately if you're going to set up with the system of defend for 90 minutes, you cannot afford to have any lapses of concentration, and we did have a lapse of concentration, and that's why we conceded. But I think overall, generally as a collective, the defence were okay yesterday, and Jared Branthwaite was one of the better performers in that. I think the big sort of negative for me, or certainly the disappointment for me, is the midfield are horrendous and have been horrendous for weeks now, and the forward line were clearly given no instruction and no idea as to what to do when they received the ball. But as I said, defensively I thought we were relatively solid. Branthwaite, yeah, I'm going to give him a 6.5 as well. Couple of moments in the game where the ball just, again, he allowed the ball to roll across him, or he was a little bit sloppy on it, he thought he had more time than he actually did, etc, etc. But other than that, generally I thought his performance was okay. I thought he battled well. I thought there was a couple of moments where he was one-on-one with certain players, and he dealt well with those moments. He held the ball up well, he didn't let it go. Yeah, I thought he was all right yesterday. I thought he was all right. James Tarkowski then. Again, I think he was all right. I don't think he was as good as Jared Branthwaite. I'm going to give him a 6. Ultimately the style and the tactic yesterday was very clearly to sit back for 90 minutes, allow Arsenal all of the ball, allow them all of the time in the world, all of the room in the world to create opportunities. Our midfield were horrendous, and the forward line, as I said, were not involved. So defensively there was a lot of pressure on that defence, and there was a lot of opportunities to create chances for Arsenal, and I thought generally we did okay at stopping them from doing that. And I thought Tarkowski, again, was okay. I don't think he was as good or as involved as Jared Branthwaite was, but there was a couple of moments where he had to step up, he had to make a challenge, he had to win the ball back, he had to move it forward, and I think he did that relatively well. Ashley Young then, I'm going to give him a 5.5. I think he was probably the least involved out of the whole of the back line. Again, nothing massive in terms of individual mistakes or individual errors or terrible performances. He was just all right, really, and ultimately, I've said this time and time again, we need players to be better than all right. We need players to be involved in goals. We need players to be involved in creating chances, especially fullbacks. Obviously, centre-halves is different, but especially your fullbacks, you don't just need them to be relatively all right defensively. You need them to be getting forward, throwing crosses in, creating chances, putting the ball in the box. And ultimately, neither of these two do that. Ashley Young's set pieces are atrocious, by the way. Whoever at Everton Football Club allows Ashley Young to take set pieces, corners, free kicks, they need a serious look at themselves in the mirror, because he cannot take set pieces. He is dreadful at taking set pieces. I don't care what he was like at Aston Villa or what he was like at Man United 53 years ago. He is dreadful at taking set pieces. and he shouldn't be on them. And yesterday there was a couple of times where we had good opportunities to get the ball in the box, and he just floated a nonsense cross into the box, and it was collected comfortably, and you're just sitting there scratching your head thinking, what was the point in that? But yeah, defensively, I thought his performance was okay overall. Again, I don't think he was anywhere near as bad as what he has been in some of the previous games. Into the midfield then, we'll do the wingers, because at the team sheet I'm looking at, that's where they are. Dwight McNeil, I'm going to give him a 5. I thought it was a difficult game for Dwight McNeil yesterday, and I don't particularly blame him for that. As I said, I think Dwight McNeil, Danjuma and Beto all fell victim of Everton not having any form of game plan or any form of system when it comes to going forward and when it comes to trying to create opportunities. I don't put that on him whatsoever. I don't put that on the players. I put that ultimately on the manager. And I honestly, I said this yesterday, but I honestly would love to sit down with Sean Dyche and say, Sean, what did you say to your forwards going into this game? What did you say to Beto? What did you say to Dwight McNeil? What did you say to Danjuma? Because I honestly think he must have just said to them, you just run around and look busy, because we're not going to be using you very much. And yeah, I felt for Dwight, obviously his first start since that injury. I think first start this season as a whole. And yeah, you could see that he wasn't quite up to it in terms of fitness. He wasn't quite up to it in terms of his sharpness levels, and in terms of being involved in the game. He wasn't involved at all, but like I said, I don't particularly blame him for that. I think that's more on the manager and on the system. But yeah, again, he wasn't massively involved yesterday, was he? Same with Danjuma, I'm going to give him a 5.5. I think he was a little bit more involved than McNeil. I think he was a little bit more aggressive. I think he was a little bit more attacking. He looked fitter naturally as well than Dwight did, but ultimately he wasn't massively involved in the game whatsoever. Every time he got the ball, it was almost like, what do we do with this now? Where do we go? How do we create something? And, you know, by the time that those thoughts have gone through his head, he's got it taken off him in Arsenal and on the counter-attack again. And obviously there's an element of this game and the Sean Dyche fans amongst us, and there is a lot of people that still think Sean Dyche is the best manager Everton are ever going to get, which is nonsense, by the way. There is 155 better managers than Sean Dyche out there now, and I could name most of them off the top of my head. But anyway, a lot of people will back the manager by saying, well, you know, we were playing against a really, really good side, and, you know, it's difficult to create, you know, good chances against a team that finished second in the Premier League last season. That's fair, but I think there was moments in that game where we could have got at Arsenal. I said it yesterday, and I'll say it again, the last 15 minutes, it's actually, it's worrying that we didn't understand and target Gabriel in that last 15 minutes of that game yesterday. Gabriel, Arsenal centre-half, was on his arse for the last 10 or 15 minutes. He could not move, he couldn't walk, he couldn't move properly, he couldn't defend, he was falling over, his passing was dreadful, and we didn't put any pressure on him. We didn't think, you know what, we'll get on him there, we'll run at him, we'll try and make something happen, we'll go through him, we'll try and force him into making a mistake. We didn't do any of that. We just allowed him time on the ball, and even when he had time on the ball, he was making mistakes, he was falling over, he was struggling to keep himself up. He was shattered, and we didn't take advantage of it whatsoever. And again, I put that on the manager, but there you go. Yeah, as I said, I thought Danjuma was a bit more involved than Dwight McNeil, but still not a massively impressive game. Into the midfield then, Garner Gay getting a 2. Thought he was atrocious. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Everton's midfield doesn't work. Whether we like the players or not, whether we think individually they're good, talented players, it's very obvious that individually Amadou Onana is a very good central midfielder. 6'5", whatever he is, 6'6", big, can put himself about, tackles well, passing stats are good, movement stats are good. Very obvious that Idrissa Gana Gueye similarly is a very good midfielder. He's just been playing with one of the best footballers ever, if not the best footballer ever, for the last 5 years of his career, until he rejoined Everton last summer. He's very clearly a good passer of the ball, good mover. Same with Decore, he gets goals, he gets involved, he's obviously got something to give in this team. But as a collective, as a three, they're atrocious. They don't work together. They've never worked together, by the way. Them three have never worked together in a team. Nobody tacks a man. None of them are particularly great defensively. None of them are particularly great going forward. They leave spaces. They're just absent. They're completely transparent. And Garner yesterday was an example of that. I thought he was terrible. I thought he was absolutely terrible yesterday. All right, he won the ball back a couple of times and maybe he saved us on a couple of occasions. But generally, I just don't think he was involved whatsoever. I really don't think he was good. Onana, similarly, I'm going to give him a 3. Again, if you disagree, tell me what I'm doing on. And don't say to me, he got a 74% pass completion rate. Because I could sit there, I could come on for Everton as a sub, and I could be playing centre midfield, and I could stand in the centre midfield, and I could pass it to my centre-back 4 times, and that's all I do in the game, 4 times, all right passes, and I've got a 100% pass completion rate, but we've lost 10-0, because everyone around me has just bypassed me dead easy on the opposition team. They've just gone bang, 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 and I've just stood there like that. I may as well not be here, but I've got a 100% pass completion rate. Nonsense. Those stats are nonsense. I watch what I watch, and we all watch what we watch, and as the eye test, as they call it, these 3 aren't good enough together. They don't work together. And Onana, again, yesterday, I've said this before about Onana, I'll say it again, he's not involved enough. He's a passenger in the majority of games he plays at Everton at the moment, and yesterday was another example of that. Again, we were playing Arsenal, they're one of the best teams in the world, fine, but he was a passenger against Wolves 3 weeks ago, he was a passenger against Fulham 5 weeks ago. It's not good enough. It's not good enough. The Corey, similarly, he's going to get a 2 as well. Yeah, couple of moments. Should he have had a penalty? Listen, again, I know people don't like it when I talk about referees or decisions or whatever, but the reality is, if that's Bukayo Saka going down and crying, which he does, he cries every time he goes down and he's fouled, that gets given as a penalty at the other end. And I don't care if people say that's not right, or if the referees want to come out and bollocks. Every single referee in the Premier League gives that as a penalty if it's on Bukayo Saka. It's as simple as that. It would have been soft. It would have been soft, but as I said, other teams get that. Everton don't. But other than that, I don't think the Corey was very involved whatsoever in the game. I really don't think he was involved whatsoever. And then Beto, I'm gonna give Beto I'm going to give him a 5 as well. Similarly to the wingers, feel a little bit sorry for him. Wasn't massively involved in the game, of course. Didn't really have a lot to do. Ultimately, the way we set up, the system, the style, the way we were playing just wasn't set out for Beto to be involved. It wasn't set out for Beto to have a good game. It wasn't set out for Beto to particularly impress or have opportunities. It wasn't a particularly... It wasn't a particularly lively day out for him, and I do feel a little bit sorry for him in that regard. And he'll have a lot more games where he's a lot more involved than yesterday. Onto the bench then, Patterson. Give him a 6. I thought he was all right when he come on. Don't really remember him doing much, but I don't really remember him making many mistakes either. So, yeah. Calvert-Lewin, again, similarly, 5 to Beto. Just wasn't involved. Couldn't get involved. Couldn't get in the game. Couldn't hold the ball up. The odd time he did hold the ball up, there was no one next to him, so he had to go backwards. Just a very frustrating game for Dom. And I don't blame Dom and I don't blame Beto for that. It was the system and the way in which we set up. Chimiti, similarly, I'll give him a 4. I don't think he was as involved as Dom. But again, I don't particularly blame him for that. As much as Dice wanted to bring on Chimiti and Calvert-Lewin and try and, go and get something out the game, the team wasn't set up to get anything out the game from minute 1. So no matter what changes he made, he didn't change the way the team was set up. So they were still isolated, and that's all they were. Dom, Beto, Chimiti, Danjuma, McNeil, all isolated at the top end of the pitch. And then James Garner, I'll give him a 5 as well. Again, I don't particularly remember him doing much. He might have got the ball a couple of times, but I don't remember him doing much. There you go. They are the player ratings. Let us know your thoughts down below. If you disagree with me, let me know. If you agree with me, let me know. If you haven't checked out the Instant Match Reaction, please do so. It is up on the channel now. We will be back tomorrow with the game review, so don't forget to look out for that one. Big thanks for watching. Leave a like if you've enjoyed this. Subscribe if you're new, and we'll see you later.